Oh, hello, look who's here. Yeah, the last video I posted was 7 months ago, which is a lot of months. And to be honest, I was sort of depressed with the new versions of Photoshop and the new things Adobe introduces that basically mean that I have to rewrite every single panel I have soon, which is a bummer. But it's probably a story for a different video. And today the topic is different. Today I'm going to talk about update of Layer Factory, which is long overdue. The first one is the alternative layout switch, which is a little button over here. What it does, it basically allows to switch between two different layouts of Layer Factory models. And the idea behind this is that from time to time I was finding myself in a situation when I wanted to use a particular model from time to time, but sort of not too often, but quite sometimes. So, and like normally storage is supposed to help with those, but if I wanted to click a specific thing, say like 5 or 7 times, it was not very convenient to go through the storage menu. So that's why there's now an alternative layout. And for this video, for example, I made a layout with the modules that I'm going to discuss. Okay, we're done with this guy. Next, new model arrays. Hola. Okay, next is the new model arrays. It does sort of what you expect to do from arrays. It clones selected layer or selected layers. And currently the model includes 2 types of layers, linear and radial. But I'll probably expand on that in the future. So why this thing even exists? Sometimes when I want some kind of an array, my usual workflow would be like this. I'm making a selection, then I'm use Ctrl-Alt-T to free transform with a clone. Then I manually try to sort of figure out when I want my clone to be, and then I use Shift-Ctrl-Alt-T to continue clone the selection. But the problem is, if I realize that this offset isn't the one I wanted, I have to undo the whole thing and then once again manually try to find the proper offset. So the array model is supposed to help me with those things. So I just run the function, I select the direction, it will be y in this case, and then I select the offset between my clones or total distance and the count of the number of clones that I want to see. So for example, let me do like maybe 20 clones and maybe 10 pixels wide. So I click preview, here's my preview. I want my array to be a little bit longer, so maybe I can do 210. Yeah, this looks fine. So I'll just place start and it's done. However, I can also use selections to help me to define some specific values. For example, say I want to fill with this line an area here. So I can just create a selection, run my linear array, and you see now selection is defined, and I can use this selection for delta or for total distance. Total distance is what I want. I choose once again my transition direction, and the number of clones, which will be 20. And if I see that my selection maybe wasn't ideal, like here, for example, I want this distance to be the same as this distance, or vice versa, I want this distance to be the same as this distance, I can just change view selection back to nothing and use the value to be my sort of starting point for my total distance value. So it goes like this, maybe like this. Beautiful. The function also works with several selected layers. Say, for example, here I have this sort of a hole thing and a cap thing. So I can select them both, draw a selection, run my function, and use the selection as for total distance, set, say, 7 count items, preview, yes, looks fine, okay, start, boom, and the resulting 2 layers, I steal my caps and holes separately, so I can maybe remove some of the caps. Cool. And another thing, by default, all the clones are made on the same layer, but there is also an option to create smart objects from these layers. So if I want to do that, I can then go and edit just one of my caps. And after saving this image, all the smart objects will be updated. So in some cases, that is quite useful. And also I can remove particular caps but just by disabling the layers. Radial array follows the same principle. I just select a layer and say I want this layer to be radially cloned around this like circular area. So I select my layer, I click radial array, and there are several options for pivot. Currently, the only one available is manual coordinates, because I don't have any selection guides or path points, but those also could be used to define a pivot. And this is actually what I want to do. Say I will press Ctrl R to show the rulers. Then I'll just move the rulers to define the pivot point for my radial array. I can hide the rulers by Ctrl H, then I go and hit my radial again, and now two guides is available as a pivot point. So from now on I can click preview to see the preview of the function, and you may also notice that the preview gets a little bit blurry, but that's only for the speed. The actual result won't be blurry at all. So, and then I can set I don't know, something like a specific number of clones or specific angle. There's also an option for only translating the clones, so they won't be rotated. And the same as with the linear array, the objects could be, the resulting objects could be smart objects, meaning that once again I can go and maybe make some modifications, and those modifications will be applied to all my objects. Okay, so arrays, linear arrays, radial arrays, cool. This one is done. Next, labels. Okay, this one is more of sort of like a layer managing thing, basically a faster way of assigning color labels to layers and then doing some things with those labeled layers. This is how the model looks. You can see all the color labels on there, and say if I select several layers and simply click a label, this label will be assigned to a layer. Usually having labels for some specific layers is nice, just to understand what's happening in your document. Some people use it, some people don't. But what this model also can do is clicking Shift on a color label will select layers with this color label. So I'm clicking Shift on the red, and it selects red ones, then orange ones, and clicking Control on the color label will toggle visibility of these layers. So I'm control clicking on the red, and it disables my red label to layers. I'm control clicking on orange, and it also disables these guys. So once again, control, blip, blip, shift, nani. Labels module is used to assign labels and select and toggle visibility of these labels. Boom. Okay, this is done. Okay, I need to go faster. Next. Okay, next I think I need a cocktail. Okay, next will be a cocktail pause. Okay, so much better. Back to transparency. Okay, beautiful. I love this one. Where is it? Back to transparency. Okay, next is bake to transparency. Layer Factory has a bake to normal function that creates a normal layer with completely opaque pixels that are, for every pixel that is different from the pixels below, it creates a 100% non-transparent opaque pixel. And back to transparency is basically the same thing, but the resulting layer, resulting pixels, all transparent, half transparent. Let me demonstrate on this example. It will be easier, I think. So I have my helper bot with layers on top. Actually, two clones of the same thing. One layer is overlay layer with some red texture, and the other one is a blended layer with some blending enabled, blend diff option enabled. And if I run my back to normal function, you can see that I'm getting two normal layers. I can merge them. But if I isolate this layer, you can see that it's almost the whole helper bot is on this layer, because there were a lot of pixels that were different from the layer below. So that's why it's like this. And say I want to run a iteration on this layer and change iteration. You see how almost the whole helper bot changes the hue iteration. Let me do the same thing, but with baked transparency. So I'm still having two layers. Both are normal layers. I can merge them, but this time, if I isolate this layer, you can see that it's almost invisible. That's because only the pixels. Basically, this function tries to limit the transparency of the pixel to the minimum needed transparency. Oh my god, it's really difficult to explain with words for me, but I hope the example shows what it did. So basically, you see, I'm still have the same effect as with the layers I had, but it's on transparency. So if I use illustration with the same value as before, you see I can still see the original pixels of my helper bot, and it's only the transparency baked pixels on top that are changing. Oh my god. Okay, I hope this makes sense. This function is also great for separating objects from background. Say I have a background and I have a copy of the background with some sort of an object. If I run back to transparency, the result will be this object I had on transparency. So this is quite useful for separating objects with shadows and with global illumination from renders, for example. Okay, I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't, oh, sorry, I guess. Okay, next. This one is done. Next, repeat last used symmetry. Okay, this one is quite simple. Okay, so let me quickly create a guide for the symmetry plane. The way I use symmetry in like 90% of cases is left to right. I have assigned it on Control P, but in some cases I want a different direction, so maybe from right to left or from bottom to top. Yeah. Let me create another one guide. So if I press Control P now, here's the result, right? Because it used left to right symmetry. If I press right to left, I can now use last symmetry to repeat the same symmetry action. And I have assigned it on Control Shift P. So now if I do something like, I don't know, some modification to this layer, I can press my key, and it's going to use the last symmetry that was used, basically. So this is quite straightforward. So I can continue from this side. And if I want to start symmetrifying this object from top to bottom, for example, I can run it once. And now, when I'm adding some weird stuff, pressing my hotkey will continue to repeat the same symmetry that was used before that. So now I'm going from bottom to top, for example, and I'm going to do something like this. Boom. Chop. Click. Okay. So this is repeat last symmetry, quite straightforward. Done. Multiwarp. Okay, multiwarp. It was actually a surprise to me that warp doesn't work with several selected layers. If I have a character, for example, with some details, or a character with clothes or something like that, and I want to warp them simultaneously, well, I'm out of luck. I was out of luck before, because now in the multi-move module, there is a multi-warp function. Oh my god. Okay, so let me try it again. There is a multi-warp function in the multi-move module. If I hit multi-warp, I have my warp preview. I go to warp mode. I can warp my layer the way I see it fits. I press my enter key, and voila. All the layers were warped separately, and they are still different layers. This also works with selection. So if I just undo all the beautiful things I did, if I select my layers with, for example, this part, because this includes shadow, antenna, and the thing. Okay, let me do something like this. Okay, so now I have my antenna, I have my bot, and I have my shadow. The only thing important about this model that it doesn't work, it only works from the expanded panel view. So if the model is contracted, you see multiwarp will be disabled. It's disabled in the menu. It's just the way life is, so it only works in the expanded view. Okay, so it's done with this guy. Okay, and the last thing is blend diff layers. Okay. Blend diff is a new layer type in my layers module. So it's one of these guys, just in the bottom. What it does, it adds a new layer with a blend diff threshold based on active color. What that means is, if I'm going to select the color here, and I'm going to create a new blend diff, you can see that it's a layer with a blend, and this number is a color value that was used for blending this layer. If I'm double click this layer, there is a blend diff gray set to underline layer, and these values are basically based on the value of this color, on the brightness of this color. So if I'm going to select a color that is slightly more saturated and will start to paint, you'll see that it works sort of like a mask based on value of the color. So only the colors of the similar values are registering the paint I'm doing. Let me create another one. So I first select the color that I want to be sort of sourced, create a new blend diff, change my color, start painting. Obviously, I can go to the options of the blending layer, to the blending options of the layer, and modify the mask the way I see fit. Say change some values or whatever. And this function also can assign blend diff values to existing layers. For example, I have this curve layer here. So if I select the color of the area that I want to be used as a blend diff source, I then unhide my curve, and I right mouse button click on the blend diff. So the specific blend diff values were added to that curves layer. And once again, I can modify them the way I see fit. And that's it. And that's it for this update. So just to recap, alternative layout switch for switching between two layouts with two sets of modules, for example. Arrays for arraying things, labels for labeling things, back to transparency, same to back to normal but produces transparent pixels. Repeatless symmetry could be used if you change symmetry planes often. multi-warp for warping multiple layers, and blend diff to quickly create masks based on value of a specific layer. Sorry, I know this video is more frantic than my usual videos, because I want to record, because usually I spend too much time on recording videos, on making everything to be as perfect as I can, and this takes just so much time, and because it takes so much time, I try to procrastinate and not doing videos, and this is just terrible, because I also have updates for Carburetor, I have updates for Brusherator and Modificator, and I actually have a new panel. I don't have it here. Okay, just believe me, I have a new panel. It's for like creating silhouettes when you draw with lasso tool, and it automatically fills everything. Anyway, it's great. And but it takes so much time to create all these videos, so I try so hard to not do them, and because of that, the updates are postponed by months and years, and this is terrible, and I really need to do these things more often. So my videos are going to be more terrible now, sorry about that. But see you soon, and hopefully not in the next year, and yeah, let me know if you have any questions or any comments or whatever, and yeah, chin chin.